What a wonderful evening, brothers and sisters. We are going to watch together what's going on at the White House. The Senate has just completed its constitutional duty, as you know well, to advise and consent. They have consented. They have made the newest Supreme Court justice with the nomination of the president and now the confirmation of the Senate. Judge Amy Coney Barrett is now Justice Barrett on the Supreme Court officially. And now what we are going to see tonight is one of two oaths that are administered to a new Supreme Court justice. My understanding is that the second one will be tomorrow morning. But this is done right away because as soon as the Senate confirms her, she's on the court. And so now she has to get to work right away. There are two oaths administered to a Supreme Court justice. One of them is called the constitutional oath, and the other one is the judicial oath. The constitutional oath is stipulated by the Constitution, and it's actually an oath that all federal officials have to take, judges and lawmakers, and to defend and uphold the Constitution. State legislators, state officials take this oath as well. There's one Constitution of the United States, and it's been the same one since our founding. So there's the constitutional oath that Justice Barrett will take. Then there's a judicial oath. That's established not by the Constitution, but that's established by statute. And the judicial oath is, while the constitutional oath is about upholding the Constitution, the judicial oath is, I will carry out the duties of a justice with fairness, with impartiality, applying the laws fairly, and so forth. And so those are the two oaths that a Supreme Court justice takes. And these ceremonies are made public to us, of course, and we are seeing there the White House, and we'll be following the broadcast from our friends at Right Side Broadcasting Network. Do we hear them commenting now? Let's. If so, we can listen in on what they're saying. Otherwise, we'll go to them when they're ready to start the ceremony. You are all rejoicing. We are rejoicing with you. You know, this confirmation happened a little bit sooner than we were anticipating. We thought that the hearings could possibly take this whole week, the deliberations in the Senate. And you know what? It was done today. It's only Monday. And we also saw I think we were all bracing ourselves after what happened with Justice Brett Kavanaugh. And you know, the left is just going crazy. They went crazy with the election of President Trump. And are we ready to start? Okay, we'll bring more commentary at the conclusion. Let's see what's going on at the White House.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, accompanied by Justice Clarence Thomas and Justice Amy Coney Barrett.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Distinguished guests and my fellow citizens. This is a momentous day for America, for the United States Constitution, and for the fair and impartial rule of law. The Constitution is the ultimate defense of American liberty. The faithful application of the law is the cornerstone of our republic. That is why, as president, I have no more solemn obligation and no greater honor than to appoint Supreme Court justices. On this October evening, and it is so beautiful, the First Lady and I welcome you to the White House to bear witness to history. In a few moments, we will proudly swear in the newest member of the United States Supreme Court, Justice Amy Coney Barrett. She is one of our nation's most brilliant legal scholars, and she will make an outstanding justice on the highest court in our land. Justice Barrett's oath will be administered by the court's longest-serving member, currently on the bench, a man whose allegiance to the law has earned him the respect and gratitude of all Americans, Justice Clarence Thomas. Our country owes a great debt of thanks to Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. We appreciate it very much, Mitch. Thank you. And we are grateful as well to the Senate Judiciary Chairman, Lindsey Graham. Thank you, Lindsey. Also with us, Senators Marsha Blackburn, Mike Braun, Bill Cassidy, Kevin Cramer, Ted Cruz, Steve Daines, Ron Johnson, James Lankford, Mike Lee, and Martha McSally. And I hope I didn't leave anybody out. And a very special thanks to our great Vice President, Mike Pence. Thank you, Mike. Also, I want to thank White House Counsel Pat Cipollone. Thank you, Pat. And very importantly, I want to welcome Justice Barrett's husband, Jesse. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you. Let me also recognize your 7 children, your great, beautiful children who have become really very, very popular in this nation. People have been watching them and loving them, and they're watching right now back home in Indiana. Thank you very much. But I speak to everyone when I say that the Barrett family has captured America's heart. It is highly fitting that Justice Barrett fills the seat of a true pioneer for women. It's Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Tonight, Justice Barrett becomes not only the 5th woman to serve on our nation's highest court, but the very first mother of school-aged children to become a Supreme Court justice. Very important. Over the past few weeks, the entire world has seen Justice Barrett's deep knowledge, tremendous poise, and towering intellect. She answered questions for hours on end. Throughout her entire confirmation, her impeccable credentials were unquestioned, unchallenged, and obvious to all. Justice Barrett earned a full academic scholarship to Notre Dame Law School, graduated first in her class, and served as a clerk for Justice Antonin Scalia. She was a beloved professor at Notre Dame Law School for 15 years before I very proudly appointed her to the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals for the 7th Circuit in 2017. The American people have been profoundly impressed to learn of her achievements, her compassion, her generosity, her faith, and her sterling character. Justice Barrett made clear she will issue rulings based solely upon a faithful reading of the law and the Constitution as written, not legislate from the bench. The equal, impartial, and constitutional rule of law that we enjoy every day in America is one of the crowning achievements in the history of human civilization. It is the triumph of reason, experience, and the values which are eternal and everlasting. Our devotion to this inheritance is what has made America the most just, exceptional, and glorious nation ever to exist. I want every American child watching to understand that this is a very special and important ceremony. We are fulfilling the duty that passes to each new generation to sustain the national traditions and virtues that make possible everything we have achieved before that. We will do tomorrow because of our Constitution and our culture of freedom. You live in a land where anything is possible and where any dream can come true. No matter who you are, no matter your background, in America, everyone is entitled to equal protection under our laws, and your sacred rights can never, ever be taken away. The march of liberty that began with the American Revolution continues onward this evening. Tonight at the White House, we carry forward the cause of freedom, equality, and justice for which so many generations of Americans have given so much. We honor the cause for which men died to win the Civil War and for which they jumped out of airplanes and shed their blood on distant battlefields. We honor the immortal principles inspired millions in the struggle for civil rights, and we take special pride in the nation that inspires billions of people all over the world. We must never take this radiant inheritance for granted. We must never lose confidence in our history, our heritage, or in our heroes. To reach for the stars, we must stand upon the strong and sturdy foundation built by those incredible Americans who came before. Justice Barrett, as you take your oath tonight, the legacy of our ancestors falls to you. The American people put their trust in you and their faith in you as you take up the task of defending our laws, our Constitution, and this country that we all love. We ask God to give you wisdom and courage. I know you will make us all very, very proud as long as we are loyal to our founding and to our fellow citizens. America's future will be bright, America's destiny will be great, and America's people will forever and always be free. I now ask Justice Thomas to administer the oath. Thank you very much.
I do solemnly swear
I, Amy Coney Barrett, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I take this obligation freely,
that I take this obligation freely,
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties of the office on which I'm about to enter.
the duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Thank you all for being here tonight. And thank you, President Trump, for selecting me to serve as an Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court. It's a privilege to be asked to serve my country in this office, and I stand here tonight truly honored and humbled. Thanks also to the Senate for giving its consent to my appointment. I am grateful for the confidence you have expressed in me, and I pledge to you and to the American people that I will discharge my duties to the very best of my ability. This was a rigorous confirmation process, and I thank all of you, especially Leader McConnell and Chairman Graham, for helping me to navigate it. My heartfelt thanks go to the members of the White House staff and Department of Justice who worked tirelessly to support me through this process. Your stamina is remarkable, and I have been the beneficiary of it. Jesse and I are also so grateful to the many people who have supported our family over these last several weeks. Through ways both tangible and intangible, you have made this day possible. Jesse and I have been truly awestruck by your generosity. I have spent a good amount of time over the last month at the Senate, both in meetings with individual senators and in days of hearings before the Senate Judiciary Committee. The confirmation process has made ever clearer to me one of the fundamental differences between the federal judiciary and the United States Senate. And perhaps the most acute is the role of policy preferences. It is the job of a senator to pursue her policy preferences. In fact, it would be a dereliction of duty for her to put policy goals aside. By contrast, it is the job of a judge to resist her policy preferences. It would be a dereliction of duty for her to give in to them. Federal judges don't stand for election. Thus, they have no basis for claiming that their preferences reflect those of the people. This separation of duty from political preference is what makes the judiciary distinct among the three branches of government. A judge declares independence not only from Congress and the president, but also from the private beliefs that might otherwise move her. The judicial oath captures the essence of the judicial duty. The rule of law must always control. My fellow Americans, even though we judges don't face elections, we still work for you. It is your Constitution that establishes the rule of law and the judicial independence that is so central to it. The oath that I have solemnly taken tonight means at its core that I will do my job without any fear or favor, and that I will do so independently of both the political branches and of my own preferences. I love the Constitution and the democratic republic that it establishes, and I will devote myself to preserving it. Thank you.
of the political spectrum, and also some of the implications of what now Justice Barrett just said. And if you're new to our program, by the way, I want to welcome you here each evening at 9 p.m. for our dialogue and our commentary. Your comments and questions are always welcome, and we can take some of those questions tonight, so stay with us. And also each morning we broadcast as well, and each afternoon, endabortion.tv. You may be watching on various social media channels, and they're all linked from endabortion.tv. So what we've just seen has been a confirmation process of about 40 days. Not unusual. Some people will tell you, oh, the Republicans rushed through the process. The Democrats will say that. No, it wasn't rushed at all. They took all the time they needed. In fact, it finished ahead of schedule. And part of the reason for that is that she's so eminently qualified. She did so well. Her background is so stellar. Her recommendations from the American Bar Association and so many others, her colleagues, her professors, are just through the roof with praise, and she demonstrated those skills and that knowledge, as the president mentioned, during these confirmation hearings. Everything was done constitutionally. Everything was done thoroughly. No corners were cut. And in fact, we've had Supreme Court justices confirmed in less time than now Justice Barrett has been confirmed. Justice John Paul Stevens, for example, his whole process of confirmation took only 19 days. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg herself took just a couple of days longer than what we have just seen with Amy Coney Barrett. You know, this was a dream come true when we were going through the confirmation process of Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Of course, our minds turned to, what would be next. And what we were always saying was that while Justice Kavanaugh was starting to move the court more solidly in our direction, because, Justice Kennedy was sometimes with us and sometimes not in the way that his decisions came down, we always were saying, well, the next one is going to be even more contentious because it's going to more dramatically shift the court in the direction of constitutionalism. In other words, the idea that she was just articulating, the judge is neutral, shouldn't put policy preferences into these decisions. Why is that important to us? Because we've seen so many policy decisions thrust upon us by the court that we, the people, don't want. Taking prayer out of public schools, taking Bible out of public schools, taking the posting of the Ten Commandments out of the public schools. These kinds of decisions started coming down in the 1960s, and it's like, we didn't want to do this. We didn't vote on this. We don't believe in this. And we started seeing these policies imposed on us by the courts. And then, of course, after those various decisions trying to eliminate God from our schools, we saw the decision on abortion, with a right that was just completely invented. Even Ruth Bader Ginsburg and others who agreed with the ultimate conclusion did not, in fact, think that Roe v. Wade had any solid constitutional reasoning behind it. And so, for us, the consideration was always, well, we want the kind of judges that President Trump is appointing. We want the kind of judges that Amy just said she represents, which is we wear black. We don't wear red. We don't wear blue. We don't put our policy preferences into our decisions. We do our very best to look at the Constitution as it's written, to look at the laws as they're written, and to apply those to the cases or controversies that come before us. And that is what we know will serve our cause. We who are pro-life, we don't want this pro-life justice to be deciding cases in a pro-life way because she happens to be pro-life. We want her deciding cases in a pro-life way because we know for sure that the Constitution does not contain a right to abortion. That's the idea. So we're having here now this moment of history, and we see my goodness, what a scene that was, right? President Trump, Justice Clarence Thomas, one of the most rock-solid justices that we have, and now Amy Coney Barrett. And when we were thinking of this more definitive shift to a constitutionalist kind of court, an originalist kind of court. In other words, not judicial activism, not creating policy through the courts. We were thinking, and we were saying back there in the days of Justice Kavanaugh's confirmation, well, here's our dream, that we would have Ruth Bader Ginsburg replaced by Amy Coney Barrett. And now, right now, before our eyes, we saw that dream come true. It's a lifetime appointment. She will serve on the court as long as she is willing and able and physically and mentally capable. Decades, one can presume. This is so extremely significant, and boy, you see those three standing there, and you've got to think, the folks who are our opponents and the folks on the left have got to be absolutely going crazy at that particular scene. Now, some of you might be told by Democrat friends or folks on the left, well, this was, Senator Schumer, the Democrat minority leader in the Senate, even went so far as to say that this was a defilement of the Senate, what the Republicans did. And it's like, what? They carried out their constitutional duty, and we owe a lot of gratitude to Senator Mitch McConnell from Kentucky and Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina. Two great senators. They are both up for re-election a week from tomorrow, and so I believe that the people of those two states will show their gratitude for their leadership by re-electing them to their seat in the Senate. They certainly deserve that. They have carried out a constitutional duty. They followed all the steps. They didn't do anything wrong. They didn't defile the Senate. And we have reason to be proud that this process could be carried out in this particular way. I know that many are surprised that there wasn't more pushback. And let me give you my opinion as to why that's the case. Why did we see such a crazy confirmation, really a disgrace of a process against Brett Kavanaugh, and in this case, nothing? And I think there's basically two reasons. First of all, she's impeccable. I mean, she is so hard for even the Democrats who are, they're shameless. She's so hard to attack. She really is. You can't, it's supposed to be a process, this confirmation process, focused on the qualifications of the nominee. And it's just so hard to find anything against her. But here's the second reason. The election. The behavior of the Democrats in the Senate with Brett Kavanaugh cost them seats in the Senate. They didn't do well in the midterm elections. They didn't. The Republicans gained 2 seats in the Senate after that disgrace of the Kavanaugh hearings. I think some of them in the Democrat Party learned a lesson. Now, they would have probably learned somewhat of a lesson anyway. But now with this vacancy coming, as no one could have predicted, so very close to the election. I mean, people were already voting as this process was underway in these last several weeks. It was really, technically speaking, right in the midst, not just close to an election, but right in the midst of the election. They had to be thinking of that and saying, wait a minute, are we going to risk losing Senate seats now? Because they desperately want to take back the Senate. They want the Senate under Democrat control. If they can have the House and the Senate and the White House, well, anytime the same party controls all 3 of those bodies, they can get a lot of stuff done. And this is what the Democrats want. I don't think they're going to get it. But the point is that they didn't want to risk losing Senate seats. I think this was their calculus, and that's why they were much more well-behaved. Let me ask another question, well, first of all, one other objection from the Democrats. Again, you might hear this from some of your friends, and I want you to be able to answer it. They'll say, well, and Chuck Schumer said this, they say, well, this was hypocritical on the part of the Republicans, See, they can't make the argument that it was unconstitutional because they did their constitutional duty the right way. They can't make the argument that it was rushed because it wasn't rushed, and there were others that were done in a much shorter time. So what other argument did they use? Well, they were hypocritical because when President Obama, prior to the last election, nominated a judge to take the Merrick Garland, right, to take the place of Justice Scalia, who had died before the 2016 election, the Republicans refused to do that. They refused to hold the hearings and confirm the nominee. So they say, oh, well, you see, you didn't confirm our nominee, but now you confirmed your own. But you see, that's exactly the point. That's exactly the point. This is not without historical precedent. In fact, the historical precedent in the United States is exactly that there have been confirmations of Supreme Court justices right close up against elections. Why? Because a president is elected for 4 years, not 3, and a senator is elected for 6 years, not 5. And when they say, well, let the people speak in the election, well, the people already spoke. They elected a Republican president for 4 years, and they increased in 2018 the Republican majority in the Senate. The voters did speak. So they're not to be deprived of what they spoke for. They spoke for a 4-year term for a president, a 6-year term for senators. They spoke. Give them what they voted for. And this has happened before in American history multiple times. What has also happened multiple times is a very simple pattern. That when you have the Republican, or when you have the Senate controlled by the same party that controls the White House, well, they're going to confirm the justice that the president of their own party appoints. When it's divided, they tend not to. That's completely understandable. Not only that, but President Obama was at the end of his second term, so we knew that there was going to be a different president in the next election. We knew there was going to be a different president. This time we don't know that there's going to be a different president. And that's what makes the purported wish of Justice Ginsburg that, oh, well, I want my replacement to be decided by the next president. How in the world do you know when there's going to be a next president? You don't know that President Trump is not going to get reelected. How is that wish to be interpreted? That you leave the seat vacant for 5 years? I don't think so. So, okay, so it's not hypocritical whatsoever. It's a very different circumstance, and it's a different circumstance with precedent in American history. Final question I want to ask and answer is, what impact does this have on Roe versus Wade? And I'll give you a brief answer to this, and then I'll be happy to take questions from you, brothers and sisters. Clarence Thomas was standing there at that and he did the swearing in today. And by the way, as I mentioned beforehand, there are 2 oaths that a Supreme Court justice takes. What you heard tonight was the constitutional oath. That's an oath taken by all federal officials to uphold the Constitution of the United States. She also has to take a judicial oath that talks specifically about the duties of a judge to be impartial and to apply the law. Very interesting. The constitutional oath comes from the Constitution. The judicial oath comes from a law, a statute. And then she goes to work right away. There's all kinds of cases that she has to start studying and ultimately vote on. But what does this have to do with Roe v. Wade? You saw Clarence Thomas there. He has been the most vocal and explicit of the Supreme Court justices about the need to reverse Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade was an invention. It wasn't a constitutional conclusion. It invented a right that isn't there. And it is a decision which was wrongly decided, and Clarence Thomas has said that in his opinions. And he believes, and this is one of the positions a judge and a justice can take, that if a decision is wrongly decided in the light of the Constitution, that is reason enough for the court to reverse the decision. No matter how many years or even decades it has been affirmed and reaffirmed. Remember, it took a longer time for the court to reverse itself on segregation than has passed so far since Roe v. Wade. So we're well within the historical time frame of correcting a bad decision. Now, other justices take the position, and it's not that all these justices have talked about this, but other justices have taken the position that, yes, a Supreme Court decision may have been wrongly decided, but you need various other reasons to overturn it. And what might some of those other reasons be? Well, let me give you an example, because I think Roe v. Wade falls under this category, even if a justice thinks that. That, in other words, besides it being wrongly decided, you also need other rationales before you go reversing yourself. Because there is an argument to be made for the stability of the court. Justices Kavanaugh and Gorsuch, before they became Supreme Court justices, were co-authors of a book called The Law of Judicial Precedent. Some of you who are law students or constitutional attorneys may well be familiar with this book. It's a nice thick one like this, and it is talking about these conditions under which a longstanding precedent might be reversed by the Supreme Court. Now, precedent, by the way, is horizontal and vertical. Horizontal precedent means the Supreme Court looking at its own past decisions on the same subject, abortion in this case that we're talking about. Vertical, and a Supreme Court has the authority, is quite capable legitimately of reversing its own decisions because they're on the same level of authority. Supreme Court today has the same amount of authority as the Supreme Court of back in 1973. But then there is something called vertical precedent. And what that means is that the lower courts, for example, the appellate courts, the circuit courts, or the district courts under them, there are 3 levels of federal courts, if they're deciding a similar subject, a similar constitutional issue that the Supreme Court has already decided on, they have to apply, in as much as it applies to the case before them, because there might be other distinctions, but in as much as it applies, they're bound by that Supreme Court precedence. This is vertical precedent. They have to look to the higher court and say, well, in the case in front of me now, if the question I'm trying to decide, and they have to look at the very specific questions, it's not as simple as, well, is abortion right or wrong? The questions are much more complex than that. If they see that the question they're trying to decide has already been answered in a Supreme Court decision, they have to apply it. They don't have to answer it again. Okay. Given that, nevertheless, a lower court judge, in applying a precedent from the Supreme Court, can still criticize it. He or she can apply it, but that doesn't mean they have to agree with it. Roe versus Wade is the most frequently criticized decision of the Supreme Court by other federal judges. The most criticized. Not only that, but it is the subject, or the object, I should say, of sustained public criticism. Just look at the March for Life, right? Look at the pro-life movement itself. We strongly object to Roe v. Wade, and the American people have been fighting this pro-life fight for 50 years. So, that's one of the arguments that is made in that book about precedent, the law of judicial precedent. Again, that Justice Gorsuch and Justice Kavanaugh were co-authors of this book. They say, well, look, the Supreme Court, comes to the point where it can overturn its own decisions if, in fact, there is a sustained public criticism of that decision. Or, and then they go into a few other reasons, it's come to find out that what we thought was something that was right actually embodies a horrible injustice. Well, what fits the bill better for that than abortion, right? People thinking that it's a right, thinking that it's an aspect of healthcare, and realizing later through the development of science that, hey, this is actually murder, Audra Thomas, that it's actually murder. Looking at some of these comments here. And science shows we know more about the unborn baby now than ever before. Also, what the court has to look at was a right that we upheld or thought we were upholding, has it proven to be harmful to the very people we were trying to help? Well, that applies here to abortion in Roe v. Wade as well, because never has there been more evidence that this so-called right to abortion as women's health, never has there been more evidence. Let's take Richard Carlucci's question. Hi, Richard. Never have there been more evidence that it's harmful to women, physically, psychologically, emotionally, socially. And furthermore, the law has changed. The circumstances back in 1973, as far as how pregnant mothers are treated in our society and what opportunities they have and what accommodations are made for them, are much different today in 2020 than they were in 73, right? We have new laws, new policies. We're much more accommodating to pregnant mothers. And not only that, but the safe haven laws have kicked in. Safe haven laws which say in every state of the union, if you're carrying a child and you feel you can't raise that child, you don't have to continue doing that. You don't have to continue raising that child. You can literally take the infant after birth and drop him or her off at a safe haven. They are designated places, maybe a firehouse, police station, hospital. Safe haven laws. Take a look, Google it. Safe haven laws. That's a very different circumstance now than it was at Roe v. Wade. The legal circumstances have changed. So all I'm saying is this, that you've got many reasons that Supreme Court justices can have and do have for saying, hey, it doesn't matter how long this Roe v. Wade thing has been around. It doesn't matter how many times we've reaffirmed it. There are reasons to overturn it. So are we closer, thanks to the event we just witnessed together 45 minutes ago, are we closer to reversing Roe v. Wade? Yes, we are closer. It doesn't guarantee that it's not going to be done, next month or anything. In fact, the justices that are willing to reverse it may well want to wait until they know that they have a stronger majority. You don't want to reverse it by a 5-4. I'm saying many will not want to reverse it by just a 5-4 margin for fear that perhaps shortly in a number of years it gets reversed back the other way again. You want to have a much more solid margin, 7-2, 8-1. We'll see what happens, and we have to continue making progress on the court. Final thought here, during her confirmation process, Judge Barrett was asked, is Roe v. Wade super precedent? Super precedent. And she asked Senator Klobuchar, well, how do you define super precedent? And Senator Klobuchar didn't know, said, well, you tell me what it is. And she said, well, it's the kind of precedent that nobody questions anymore. And certainly Roe v. Wade doesn't fall under that category. I mean, we don't have marches or movements in our country, saying, let's go back to instituting slavery. I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't individual citizens that still think that way, but you don't have marches of, hundreds of thousands of people through the streets of Washington every single year saying, let's bring back slavery, right? Certain kinds of precedent are so well accepted in society that they don't get challenged anymore. Roe v. Wade is exactly in the opposite category. It's the most challenged, the most contentious, the most criticized decision that the court has ever made. So we have good hope that we are, in fact, a step closer tonight to the reversal of this most tragic decision of our nation's history. Longtime friend Richard Carlucci, thank you for being with us, is asking me if we that are Catholic and have a responsibility to our Lord, how can one separate this from the duty of office if God's laws trump human laws? Well, that's true. You can't. And it's not a question of, in that case, it's not a question even of personal preference. There are obligations that pertain. I mean, you can't even take an oath like she took. I mean, the very taking of that oath presumes what? It presumes that, oaths are binding. There's a morality. You have to be honest. I mean, there's certain aspects of God's law that permeate everything we do. And certainly one is not exempt from that, and one in fact has to apply that in what they do. So basic norms. Now, when it comes to abortion, that is the clarification that we need to ultimately bring into the law, that this is not ultimately a matter of personal preference, any more than it would be to legalize, the murder of anybody. You can't just erase the humanity of the child in the womb. You've got to recognize that. You've got to apply and protect that. So it's not a complete separation of everything that we believe from everything that we do in the public sphere. Not by no means. So that's an important question, and that's good to point out. Well, friends. Somebody is saying, what is Carol saying? Roe v. Wade is precedent in the Constitution. All justices have confirmed it. No, all justices have not confirmed. The justices disagree with that. Remember, even Roe v. Wade itself had two dissenters, Justice White and Justice Rehnquist. But again, Clarence Thomas, who was right there tonight, as forcefully, repeatedly said, Roe v. Wade has no basis in the Constitution. It isn't there. When you take the Constitution and read it, you don't have any right to abortion in that Constitution. And in fact, here's one of the reasons that you can tell. Roe v. Wade was not the Supreme Court's only decision on abortion. There were dozens of decisions came after that. One of them came out just a few months ago. The court is every couple of years or so, an abortion decision ends up getting decided by the court. And this has been going on now for over 4 decades. When you look at the decisions that have reaffirmed Roe v. Wade, do you find, if you line up all the abortion decisions, the same rationale for upholding Roe v. Wade in all those decisions? Because if it was in the Constitution and if it was in fact a constitutional reason that they had decided that way, you would think that, it would be the same rationale all the way through the decades. And in fact, it isn't. When you line up all the court's decisions on abortion one after another, the rationale they try to give to it, here, let's get Neil here. We're going to respond to Neil here. Oh, is that a Canadian flag, Neil? Well, you got taxes in Canada? What's going on here? We'll get to him in a second, because there's always a question like this on every broadcast. We got to just, we got to obliterate these arguments. But the point here about the Constitution is the various decisions of the court on abortion are all over the map in how they try to justify it, which is clear evidence that the reason isn't there. The reason isn't there. It's not in the Constitution. Tax-free status, meddling in politics. You see, Neil, of course he's from a different country, doesn't think that we're supposed to take part in the governance of our country. He thinks that if I take this collar off, somehow, then I can be, then I could be a citizen, right? I could be a citizen. I could do my duties as a citizen. Come on. Folks, you begin to realize that there aren't words to express the idiocy of certain ideas. I'm not insulting anyone personally. But the idiocy of certain ideas. Are we not supposed to be, as religious people, or whether we're religious or not, but the people who are religious, God says change the world. Does he want us to make the world a better place or not? Meddling in politics? You mean telling people they can't kill babies? Is that the kind of meddling in politics that you're talking about? Oh, sure. If a politician wants to come along and say it's okay to chop a baby's head off, he's a politician, I can't say anything about that. Well, then I should take my collar off because I'm being one terrible priest. You see, some people think that it's terrible for a priest to be talking about politics. I say it's terrible for a priest to be silent about it when the politics that you're talking about is chopping babies' heads off. Here, let's where's that diagram? Rob, could you get that abortion diagram? I'm going to show you something there. Neil, keep your eyes open. You might start to get some cloudy stuff in your eyes right now. They might start to itch. They might start to hurt because I'm going to show you something that will probably burn your eyes right out. Here, take a look at this. Tell me about meddling in politics. Here, that's what we're talking about there. Here, let me stand up and go close to the camera. Here you go, Neil. This is for you, okay? You see that? Is that a baby? That look like a baby, or is it meddling in politics to say that that's a baby? You know what this is? This is a medical diagram of what abortion does to a baby. Look at that, Neil. How many arms does that baby have? Go ahead, count them. How many legs? Meddling in politics. You want to be a wimpy, cowardly, silent person that says they believe in God. Oh, yeah, I'm a preacher of the gospel and everything. And somehow this, I'm not going to, shh. We're not supposed to say anything about this, right, Neil? Shh. I think the baby's name is Neil, actually. What do you think of that? What do you think of what's happening to this baby? Think it's okay? It's okay to be silent about that, right? Shame on you. Shame on everybody who's silent on this. Shame on everybody who thinks the church should be silent about it. This is the murder of human beings. And anyone who is silent about this shares the guilt. Anyone who votes in such a way that allows this is voting to cooperate with it. You share the guilt. So, let's see some of the other. Shane is saying, yes, that's right, murder is correct. And Gladys and some of the rest of you are saying very accurately that the separation of church and state is to keep the state from telling the church what to do. You know, another thing about the separation of church and state is to realize that there have been court cases dealing with whether the state can step in to stop the church from killing children. When would the church kill children? Well, the Supreme Court actually proposed that as a hypothetical in one of its cases and said, well, let's say if they were sacrificing babies on the altar and they said that this is pleasing to God. Could the state step in and tell the church you can't do that? And the answer was, the court was, well, of course they can. The church is free to believe what it wants, but it can't chop babies apart. The state would have to come in and stop that. That wouldn't be a violation of the separation of church and state, would it? You think are people going to come? Would people get away with coming along and saying, you can't interfere with that separation of church and state. We can kill babies all we want. No, both the church and the state have duties to human rights. Duties to human rights. And they both have to step in when human rights and human lives are at stake. Okay, well, let's see. Maybe we could take one more question if there is one. What's James saying here? They say they believe in the science. The science says life begins at the moment of conception. Therefore, they're murdering these babies. You know, isn't that right? Isn't that a good point? I was making that point to somebody the other day, that these Democrats, one of their talking points now, I saw a Biden bumper sticker in the neighborhood the other day, and next to the Biden-Harris bumper sticker, it said, facts matter. And this is their latest talking point. They think they have some kind of monopoly over facts. And I don't think so. Biden says, we have to listen to the science. Yeah, they want to listen to the science when it comes to the politically correct nonsense about climate change. They think they're listening to science. They're actually not. If you listen to science, you'll see what kind of a myth that is. But they claim, we're listening to the science. They think they're listening to the science when it comes to COVID. And boy, they're all screwed up on that one. They don't know what in the world they're talking about. But then when it comes to the unborn, science all of a sudden doesn't have nothing to say. We bring to them the scientific facts about who the unborn child is right from fertilization. And you know what they say? You're imposing a religious belief. This is what they actually say. They call the science religious beliefs. I'll tell you what, you can see this in some of the court decisions coming out of South Dakota, for example. The Rounds case dealing with Planned Parenthood, that had to do with a law. Let me explain this to you briefly. That had to do with a law that required the abortionist to say to the mom who was getting the procedure that the abortion procedure destroys a whole separate, unique, living human being. That was the wording that the law required the abortion practitioner to tell the mother getting an abortion. This destroys a whole separate, unique, living human being. Planned Parenthood challenged the law, and they said, you're trying to get us to say a religious belief or impose an ideological opinion. And the court came back and said no. The court came back and said, that's the science. We're not asking Planned Parenthood to speak a religious belief or an ideological position. We're saying that the doctor should be scientifically accurate in informing the mother of what the actual procedure that she's about to have does. So Democrats, pay attention. Look at the science. Practice what you preach. It is about the science, and the science makes it very clear that these are babies being destroyed. Well, all of this that we saw tonight, friends, we're part of a moment in history. And doesn't it tell us about the importance of these elections? 1 week from tomorrow, we need to re-elect President Trump because we're going to continue to get the excellent kind of judges on the courts that were sworn in right before our eyes this morning. Let this be a further motivation for our fellow voters. Voters in 2016 elected President Trump because of the Supreme Court. You know that more than 20% of those that voted for him voted, more than 20% actually of the voters said that the Supreme Court was a motivating factor, and 57% of those voted for President Trump. So we're going to see a similar dynamic now. What happened tonight is going to encourage more and more people to get more and more voters to the polls. And that is something that is, Arthur, very important for us to be doing. We're going to outnumber all of the deceived supporters of abortion and supporters of those who want to continue abortion. Outnumber them. Remember what the president said today in his rallies. He had 3 rallies in Pennsylvania, and I hope you're watching these rallies. Remember what the president said. The vote next week needs to be not just a victory for us. It needs to be a rebuke to the other side. A rebuke. Such a thunderous defeat of their godless philosophies, their destructive policies, anti-life practices like abortion. It has got to be a rebuke against socialism, open borders, globalism, all of the destructive. See, it's not just that we think the Democrat policies are different. It's not that they're just different. You can have a lot of different things that are harmless. No, this is not something different. The Democrat policies are destructive. And so the defeat has to be a stinging rebuke of these people that want to take over our country, destroy our monuments, rewrite our history, defund the police, bring in chaos instead of law and order. No, this victory we have next week has to be a stunning rebuke to them. It's got to be by such overwhelming margins that it gets decided that night. We don't want any of this nonsense of, oh, well, November 4th comes, well, we still don't know the outcome of the election. And November 5th comes, and oh, well, they're still counting ballots in Pennsylvania. And November 6th comes and says, well, we're still not sure how this election is going to go. This could lead to such tension and chaos in our country. We don't need any of that. We don't want any of that. We don't just want a victory. We want a decisive victory. And brothers and sisters, you can bring it about. You can bring it about. It's in our hands. It's in your hands. Let's start now. If we even haven't done anything yet, we got to be working like crazy every day to mobilize more and more voters. Get the like-minded voters. Go through your list of contacts. Contact everyone you can. Give out literature. Put everything else aside that you can put off until after next week, and work in these next 8 days like crazy for the elections so that we can have a decisive victory for life and for the United States of America. God bless you, friends. Thanks for being with me for this historic night, seeing Amy Coney Barrett confirmed. I hope you all can join me. Some of you may be joining for the first time. Join me every day. We're broadcasting morning, noon, and night. And we've got a lot of good information to share with you. And again, you can make the difference in this great election. So may the Lord bless you and strengthen you and reward you for your faithfulness. And may he bless you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. And God bless Justice Amy Coney Barrett, the Senate who confirmed her, and the President who nominated her. Good night, friends.
And we have Father Frank Pavone, someplace there in the audience, so I appreciate you. I appreciate you.
Follow him, Father Frank Pavone, Fr. Frank Pavone on Twitter. He is the National Director of Priests for Life. Please go to priestsforlife.org.